Talk Central is brought to you by BlackBerry. Welcome to Talk Central, the business technology podcast brought to you by the editors at techcentral.co.za. My name is Duncan McLeod. I'm here with Candice Jones. Hi, Candice.
Hey, Duncan.
We're a couple of days late with the show. We apologize for that. It's been a hectic couple of days. Candice was away on Friday, and Monday just turned into one of those days. So it's Tuesday afternoon, unusual time to be recording the Talk Central podcast, but better late than never. And it's just myself and Candice in the studio today, so it gives us an opportunity to catch up on some of the news that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, and there's certainly been plenty of that.
Indeed there has. Quite exciting stuff.
Yeah, we have a new chairman at Telkom.
That's been a long time in the making, but no surprises there.
Not a surprise that Jeff Molabella is moving on. I was a little surprised that he is staying on as a director of the company, a non-executive government-appointed director for the next 3 years. Jeff Molabella, of course, was appointed by the former Communications Minister, Siphiwe Nyanda, and his term was extended twice while government looked for a replacement for him. That replacement has now been found in the form of Lazarus Zim, who has interests in the mining industry and in the newspaper industry.
Yes, the brand new New Age.
The New Age Media, which publishes the New Age, which is the newspaper effectively owned by the Guptas.
Yes.
Atul Gupta, well known for being the founder of Sahara Computers and quite a controversial character, an Indian national who moved to South Africa, I think, about 15 years ago. And seen as very close to President Jacob Zuma and politically well connected, as is Lazarus Zim. And they have cross directorships in their companies. And of course, as you know, Candice, Lazarus Zim sits on the board of New Age Media, and Atul Gupta from New Age Media sits on the board of Afropalm Resources, which is Lazarus Zim's mining investment company.
But Lazarus Sim is also no stranger to telecoms either.
He isn't, no. He, in fact, to the ICT sector more broadly, he was a former CEO of Mnet and Supersport before leaving there to head off. In fact, I think he left there to go to MTN International, where he headed up MTN's international operations. And then after that, I think he moved on to Anglo-American to head up Anglo-American's operations in South Africa. So background in both mining and in the ICT space. Which
brings both very good business acumen and at least a touch of experience in the space that he's working in. And there have been mixed reactions about his appointment. Some people are hailing it as he's a great businessman and he's done pretty well in the mining industry. And others are saying that it was a political appointment because of his connections.
I suspect it's a bit of both, really. He brings the political connection, but also brings the business experience. So perhaps it was quite a smart move by Roy Padiachi to appoint him. I think he was speaking to BMI Technology, to Dennis Smith, the MD at BMI Technology, the other day. He was saying that it could be a brilliant appointment, given that it could shield the new CEO of Telkom from political interference, leave the chairman to get on with dealing with the politicians while the CEO gets on with the job of fixing Telkom.
Well, whoever comes in as the CEO of Telkom is going to need some sort of political shielding, because as you know, Telkom is effectively a political entity that has to deal with a lot of politics. One of the few companies, or at least one of the few telecoms companies that are having to deal with these issues. And the connections that Lazarus Sim brings to the table and the strength of the connections could well put him in the perfect place to be a buffer and literally give the CEO an opportunity to actually get stuck into business. Because certain things are going to have to be done. For example, we can expect that Telkom will start cutting jobs in the not too distant future, and that's going to have to be something that goes through government because of government's actual plan of boosting jobs through the next 5 years. So I mean that's something that's really going to need some political clout, and perhaps Lazarus Sim is the person to do that.
Yeah, I mean the previous the outgoing CEO Jeffrey Hedberg, I think one of the main reasons he's decided to move on is he felt he wouldn't get the political support he believed he would need to do what's necessary at Telkom, and that includes reducing the workforce. Some of my senior sources inside Telkom suggest that up to 20% of the workforce needs to be retrenched to make the company effective and competitive in the telecommunications industry. And it's a big challenge because Telkom is a very unionized company. This communication workers union in particular is a very strong union inside Telkom, and pushing through job retrenchments is certainly not going to be popular, and certainly not going to be popular in an election year.
Absolutely not. Which is why if they manage to get it right, then Lazarus is actually doing his job,
Yes.
which is a great thing. But I think the biggest litmus test for his allegiances and what he plans as the chairman of Telkom will be the choice of the CEO. Although having said that, the CEO is not chosen simply by the chairman, but by the board. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. But I do think that it will be a litmus test of how he plans to act as chairman over the next 3 years. I think is his appointment.
The CEO, of the appointment of the Telkom CEO is effectively a government decision because in terms of the golden share, which expires on the 5th of March, by the way, so they may make an appointment by the 5th of March, although not necessarily. They already have 5 directors on the board plus the chairman. So I think that they have this veto right in terms of the appointment of the CEO, but I think it will effectively be a government decision, or there will have to be strong consultation with government about who gets appointed as the new CEO. And we're starting to see some indications of where government might be thinking in that regard. I know the Sunday Times reported this weekend that Romeo Khumalo, the executive head of commercial at Vodacom, is the most likely for the position. We've been speculating about Romeo Khumalo taking the job for quite some time. He's also tipped as a potential replacement for Shamil Yusuf as CEO of Vodacom. But, Khumalo is not the only name that's been thrown in the hat. We've been hearing some other names as well. The CEO of ArcelorMittal, the CEO of Tiger Brands, potentially gunning for the position.
Pinky Moholi, Peter Nelson.
Pinky Moholi is an unknown. She has said previously that, or she's expressed reservations previously about potentially taking the post. I think she knows what a political challenge it can be. We know that Peter Nelson, the former chief financial officer, has applied for the post. So there are a lot of names floating around at the moment. But ultimately, I think communications minister Roy Pariachi is going to have a leading role to play around who gets appointed. And he appears to have picked, while Lazarus Zim is politically well connected and perhaps is somewhat controversial because of his alliance with the Guptas, he is seen as a stronger chairman than the predecessor, Jeff Molabella. And one hopes that thinking is going to flow through to the appointment of the new CEO. I was chatting to Ernest Kaplan from Kaplan Equity Analysts the other day, and he said that the worst thing that could happen to Telkom now is if they try and appoint a crony, basically, a government crony, to run the company, rather than someone who's strong, independent, and who can really do what's necessary to turn the organization around.
But perhaps the appointment of Lazarus is the communications minister thinking out of the box, providing a political appointment that will be hailed in government sectors and possibly even business sectors, and using that as a balance to bring what Telkom needs, to the table. And I think that's perhaps what he was thinking out of the box. We need some balance between government and private sector. This could be it.
No, I think you're right. But we with Jeffrey Hedberg leaving at the end of March, we should know within the next month or so who the new CEO is. Possibly by the 5th of March, although my guess is we're not going to know until the end of March.
Well, I suppose all the people that we've heard that are possibly in the running, they could all make a decent enough attempt at it. I wonder about some of the political connections that some of them have, and I also wonder about the strength of character that some of them have. Specifically when you're going to be facing the possibility of job cuts and then the unions going up in arms about that. Local loop unbundling, it's going to be a severely technical issue. Someone that understands the industry is going to need to be in there to make sure that works. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of it. But it should be an interesting next couple of months.
It will indeed. And there's been the speculation that Pinky Moholi could be heading to Vodacom to head up Vodacom South Africa. So we can't discount that rumour either at this stage.
No, I suppose there aren't any rumours we can discount at this point. But we'll see.
Yeah, anyway, keep an eye on Tech Central for all the latest news on Telkom CEO and what's happening at the organisation. And I think it just goes without saying that it really is a critical appointment. I mean, Telkom is so key to the economy. It still is the only fixed line operator in South Africa that provides fixed access lines to consumers and to businesses. Well, certainly to consumers. I know some of the bigger telcos, for example, have begun laying fibre to some of the big corporates, but certainly in the consumer market, they're the only fixed line player.
Well, they have to up their game, and they definitely need solid leadership in the next few months soon to make sure that it runs apace.
Yeah. Moving on, Candice, there have been some other movements in the telecommunications industry in the last week. Tony van Marken, I think it was quite a surprise announcement which came out in SENS late last week, I think it was now, that he was going to be stepping down as CEO of Vox Telecom.
Yeah.
He's been there for the past 5 years, working hand in hand with the Group MD, Doug Reed, and had a chance to have a chat with him on the telephone. And I think he indicated to me that he's tired of commuting. He lives in Franschhoek, which is a beautiful part of South Africa.
It is indeed.
Down near the wine farms. Maybe we should move our head office down there sometime. Not going to happen, unfortunately. Fortunately, we have to be up here in Johannesburg. But
nice dream, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe one day. Maybe when the acid mine drainage eventually leaks across the Highveld and the place is turned into a barren wasteland, we'll move down to Franschhoek.
Doesn't sound promising.
No, probably not. Anyway, Tony, he's been commuting every week, so he flies up on Monday and Tuesday morning and spends a couple of days in Joburg and flies back down again. And he felt that he wasn't being able to give the sort of commitment he felt he needed to the Vox group. So he couldn't, for example, if someone needed him urgently on a Friday afternoon, he wasn't in town. He was down in the Western Cape. So he's decided to step down. He said he's going to take the rest of the year off, which is really nice, to go mountain climbing, which is his passion, and to go cycling. As you know, Candice, he's led a number of expeditions for Vox Telecom executives.
Yes, he has. If you walk into his office, you can see all of those fantastic photographs of the expeditions that he's been on.
Yeah, and their boardrooms are named after mountains.
Yes.
Himalayas and all the rest of it. Yeah, if you look at some of the old Vox Telecom annual reports, they usually do an annual piece on the Vox mountaineering trip. And I remember seeing the pictures of Doug Reed being heading up Mount Kilimanjaro and not looking the happiest I've ever seen him.
I think Doug is happier in an aeroplane, yes. Which is his hobby and passion.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know
Flying,
that.
yes.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
has he got his own plane?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So Tony's position isn't actually going to be replaced at Vox, as I understand it. Doug is really going to assume the responsibilities there. Vox's share price has taken a bit of a hammering over the last few days. I see this afternoon that it's down to 37 cents. And I think that's quite frustrating for the executives there. It really has been languishing.
Which is a pity, because I actually think that Doug has the wherewithal to take the company to where it needs to be. There's a lot to be said for what Tony has done there, but I don't think that Doug is incapable.
Not at all, not at all. I mean, they've got a very good business there. I mean, they've built a very good network. They've got a great voice network. They've got a great data network.
I think they took a little bit of a speed bobble over the interconnection rate.
The share price is entirely related to the cut in interconnection rates and the worries about the impact it's going to have on the LCR, least cost routing revenues at their largest subsidiary, Vox Orion.
But that's being moved now. Those are all they're converting all of those customers to Crystal Vox.
They are converting it to their voice over IP service.
Which, as far as I can tell, and as far as market trends are going, the voice over IP service market is growing and growing rapidly at the moment.
I was chatting to Jacques Dutoit about this, and he says they're having a great deal of success in converting these clients across. I think they're somewhere around half of their customers converted to the Crystal Vox product, and he says they're generating the same amount of profit as the LCR guys were producing before. But it's very clear that analysts and investors are adopting a wait and see attitude when it comes to Vox, that they want to see the proof that the revenue is actually being created and that LCR isn't going to simply knock a hole in Vox's bottom line. So I guess we'll have to wait a bit longer to see if Vox's share price fortunes are going to turn around. But of course,
perhaps we won't have to wait all that long, because as far as we can tell, they're not going to be on the exchange for that much longer.
Yeah, everything's pointing to them. They've been trading under cautionary for the last 5 months or so. Everything's pointing to them to being in discussions about delisting Vox from the stock exchange.
And not surprising, the volumes haven't been exactly sterling, which
and the share price is languishing. But if for Crystal Vox is doing well for Vox Orion and the business is in a turnaround phase, it'd be a bit disappointing, I think, for Vox Telecom shareholders, and I'm one of them. Who bought in at a much higher share price. I bought in at about R1. Some shareholders have locked in at around R2. So it'll be a bit disappointing for unless a serious premium is offered. It'll be a bit disappointing for Vox Telecom shareholders if the company is being bought out at its low point now, just as the fortunes are changing and the profits are going to start rolling in.
Well, I think it would be a pity for the industry in general. We're losing a lot of telecoms companies from the exchange, and it's sad because it's almost like a change of season. But I think that Vox is doing well, and I think that Doug is going to take it to its next phase. So we'll see more from them.
Yeah, there have been a lot of delistings in the tech space recently, actually, and Data being the biggest among them. These things are always cyclical, though. You always get delisting phases and listing phases. So maybe we're going to head into a listing phase later this year for the tech sector.
Absolutely.
Great. Candice, we're halfway through the show. I think we should take a quick break there. We'll be back right after these messages. Welcome back to Talk Central, the business technology podcast brought to you by the editors at techcentral.co.za. My name is Duncan McLeod. I'm here with Deputy Editor of Tech Central, Candice Jones. Hi, Candice.
Hey.
Great. So let's stop getting all negative about things and talking about something positive for a change. Fire ID, which was a negative story a month ago, is now a very positive story.
Absolutely.
What's happened?
It has actually found a white knight to save it. As you know, a month ago, it lost its funding from Raynet, which is Johan Rupert's investment business.
Just a bit of background here. Fire ID is a very promising startup based down in the Western Cape in Stellenbosch, right?
As far as I know, yes. And they basically do security developments for mobile. Security tokens for mobile, which is a fantastic an up-and-coming business, specifically with so many people connecting to social networking and those kinds of things that are high security issues on their mobile phone. So this is it's a really great business. It was always looked at as one of the better up-and-coming businesses in the startup sector in South Africa. And last month was a horrible, traumatic experience.
They retrenched 40 staff, all of their staff complement effectively.
Effectively, yeah. But Eleanor Craig Jr.'s business, World of Avatar, his investment business, has come in to save the day and is basically keeping the doors open for Fire ID.
But we don't know the details. Eleanor Craig is not actually saying very much about how much he's investing in the business, how much he's paid for it. I'm assuming he got it at bargain basement price, if not for nothing. And he's going to be investing to keep the business alive. It's not clear how many staff jobs are going to be saved through this process. I mean, a lot of these staff have probably moved on to other companies by now or started their own ventures. So there's a bit of a lack of clarity at the moment, but he did say to you when you spoke to Eleanor Craig that the management team will be staying on and Jenny Dugmore will be staying on as the CEO, is that right?
Absolutely, yes. He says as far as he is concerned, the business is as it is and comes as it comes, and everybody who was involved in the management team will stay on in the management team.
Okay.
So that includes Jenny Dugmore, the CEO, who I'm still trying to get hold of to chat to about how many jobs are being saved and that kind of thing. So.
Okay. Great. Well, I've been meaning to actually get down to Stellenbosch, where Alan Craig, who's, by the way, of course, the son of the former CEO of Vodacom, not to confuse the two, to chat about this World of Avatar business that he's created. He's made a number of investments, including in an online news website, the Daily Maverick, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and a number of other investments. Arc Telecoms comes to mind in the telecommunications space. But he's making a number of investments, so hopefully I'll have a chance to fly down to Cape Town one of these days to go and have a chat with him and find out what his investment criteria are, what his plans are, and where he's taking the World of Avatar. But it sounds like he's doing some interesting stuff down in the Western Cape.
For me, it's just good news that Fire ID is back on its feet and ready to get going again. I think that's they've won so many awards for this product, and the product really looks promising. So it's very exciting for them.
Good. Well, it's good to see innovation, South African innovation, potentially not going to waste. So we'll definitely keep a very close eye on that story.
Absolutely.
Candice, the undersea cable story continues to bubble along. The ACE cable. There was some speculation this week. In fact, you had a conversation with Steve Song, who's the author of a very well-known undersea cables map, African undersea cables map. You had some conversations with him and with some potential investors in the ACE Africa Coast to Europe undersea cable, and there was some confusion on Monday about whether the ACE cable was still coming. But in fact, it is. So
it is.
What's the story?
Well, the ACE cable was there was, as you say, speculation that it would stop in Sao Tome, which is a Portuguese-speaking island off the
Sao
coast.
Tome and Principe.
Yes,
it's a tiny little island.
They're actually two separate islands.
Oh, okay.
But they're about, I think, 140 kilometers from each other.
Okay.
And they're in the Gulf of Guinea, and that's sort of the where North Africa is sort of ends.
It's like in the armpit of Africa.
Yes.
Yes.
And so there was speculation that the cable would end there, and that was always the first phase of the cable. But we have spoken subsequently to Baharicom, who is a signatory on the cable,
and
one of the larger investors in the cable. And they're saying, no, it's still on track, it's still coming to South Africa and should land in Azefontein late next year.
Azefontein is just north of, I was actually down there last year, so I know exactly where it is. It's just north of Melkbos Strand, where the SAT3 cable lands. It's all along the west coast, north of Cape Town. And it's Azefontein is also going to be the landing point for the West African cable system, the WAC system, which is going to be the direct competitor to the ACE system. Now, to put in perspective, these are mega cables that are coming.
They're massive.
They're going to put the CCOM cable on the east coast. I mean, it's in the shade. The two cables in the west have a design capacity. So just to emphasize, this is not going to be what's been lit up initially. They have a design capacity initially of 5.1 terabits a second each.
Yes.
So 10 terabytes of new capacity coming down the west coast, whereas the maximum capacity on the west coast at the moment through the SAT3 cable is 340 gigabits.
Yes.
So massive, massive cables coming.
From what we can tell, we're looking at about 400 gigabits per second in some areas, while in other areas it will be far smaller capacities that would be lit up at the start. I mean, these cables...
In some other countries.
Yes. At least the ACE cable is being built with some of the most advanced technologies available for undersea services. So
yeah, they use a type of I'm going to get very technical here for a second. They use something called dense wave division multiplexing, which is a way of squeezing more information down light waves through a cable.
Yes.
Basically over a piece of fiber optic cable, and they're using something called 40 gigabit wavelengths.
Yes.
Which is the latest and greatest technology.
Yes.
And it's continually evolving. So down the line, we may have 160 gigabit wavelengths, and it's going to continue to develop. So these cables could actually have a much higher capacity down the line. But deploying it using the latest 40 gigabit per second wavelength technology, the two cable systems, WAX and ACE, will have a capacity of 5 terabits each.
Exactly. But more excitingly, according to the CEO of Baharicom, we could also see some of the cable investors branching off the actual undersea cable, the ACE cable, and looking at terrestrial fiber rollout to put in backhaul networks to some of the countries that have no access to backhaul. And you're looking at...
Well, no access to undersea cables, direct access to undersea cables.
Direct access to undersea cables, and also access to internal infrastructure, which South Africa is now picking up on with the national cables going through Telkom, MTN, Vodacom and Neotel, where other countries across the continent don't have that kind of capacity available. Most people are still using satellite.
Interesting. Be interesting to see what sort of backhaul capacity gets invested in South Africa as part of the ACE investment. And we know there is some talk potentially around local investors getting involved in building some sort of fiber capacity.
There is, but we haven't got any details on that yet. Also, interestingly enough, Centec, which signed a partnership agreement with the ACE Cable Consortium, I think last year or the year before, will also no longer be landing the cable as we'd expected, using its license to land the cable in South Africa.
Not that we learnt this from Telkom, let it be known, from Centec, let it be known.
No.
We learnt this from the Baharicom CEO.
CEO.
Numerous calls to Centec over the last couple of months, in fact, on a number of issues, to talk to them about digital terrestrial television, to talk to them about the ACE cable, and a number of other issues have been met with deafening silence, and we wonder what's happening at Centec. We've tried to get an interview with their CEO on digital terrestrial television. The meeting was cancelled. We've tried on a number of occasions now to set up that meeting again to talk to them about DTT. They've failed to respond to your queries on the ACE cable, and it does make me wonder what's happening at CCOM. If you guys, getting my names mixed up today. I'm mid-rant here, that's why. The point is, Centec is not good enough. You need to communicate better. We need to know what you're up to. You're a state-owned enterprise, and you need to be communicating with the public about the investments that you're making and what you're up to.
And it's possibly why a continental government-backed cable consortium has decided not to go with Centec to land the cable anymore. I don't want to speculate because it's a little bit unfair to Centec, but it would have been nice if they told us why or what was going on. But definitely something going on at Centec that needs to be investigated.
No, they need to improve their communication, without a doubt. Talking about Vodacom and MTN, they've introduced some interesting new devices. I know this has been out for about a week and a half already, but they're sitting on the table here. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, we've got them here. The first is now these products which were introduced within days of each other are aimed at trying to bridge the digital divide and get consumers, lower LSM consumers, onto the internet for the first time. They both connect to your TV set, so you don't need a computer to get online. They've got built-in SIM cards. They both have keyboards, although the form factors of the two are very different. The Vodacom product, which is designed by Vodafone, costs 749 Rand a month, although it doesn't have a GPRS. Sorry, it doesn't have a 3G connection, whereas the MTN product does. So this one uses an Edge connection. Candice is just showing them to the camera now if you're watching the video version. I quite like the form factor of the Vodacom one. I think it's a sexier looking device. I should say the Vodafone version, so it's got big Vodafone branding on the back. It's a sexier looking device, although I'm not sure it's as functional as the MTN one. First of all, it's edge only, as I stated, whereas the MTN one is 3G. And the keyboard is quite small, and the feedback from the keys isn't great. The MTN one, on the other hand, while doesn't look as good, maybe a little bit more functional because you've got a fuller sized keyboard, and it even comes with a telephone handset, so you can make calls
And send SMSs.
And send SMSs from the phone, and it has a separate mouse. Now, I'm not sure this is particularly effective if you're sitting in a lounge situation. It's a basic cheap laser mouse. I'm not sure how well this would work if you had it on your couch. But it's a decent attempt, I think, these devices, a decent attempt by the operators to start to address a crippling problem in South Africa, and that's the lack of broadband penetration, just the lack of internet connectivity to the vast majority of the population.
I'd like to hail the operators, because definitely innovation needs to start, and this is where it starts.
Yes.
There are, however, some serious issues with these devices, not least of all the pricing.
Yes.
And also the fact that the Vodacom one doesn't have 3G availability.
Yes.
That's problematic. And also, it's difficult for local South Africans who are trying to access the internet using these kinds of devices to pay the data rates that the two operators are charging.
That's the real challenge, yes. The real problem with these things.
When you're looking at the fact that most of the lower end market, the people that they're actually targeting, spend their last R5 from their paycheck sending SMSs or checking balances on banking, and now you want them to fork out another 10 or 15 Rand for the 5 seconds that they can spend checking their email. It makes it's quite problematic.
You wrote a very good column on this on Tech Central late last week, Candice.
And got thank yous from both MTN and from Vodacom.
Yes, I had to have a chuckle about that when you told me, suggesting that they're going to take your advice to heart. We'll see. What they really need to do here, and I know it's more difficult with the MTN offering because it's 3G based, but they need to introduce some sort of. And I was chatting to a guy at Vodacom who didn't like the word uncapped. He used the term worry-free, which I actually quite like as well.
I also like
Gives you worry-free browsing. It doesn't have to be uncapped because someone is going to come along and try and abuse the system. Offer worry-free browsing where for a certain committed amount a month, perhaps 50 Rand, you can browse the web and check your email on an unlimited basis. Sure, if you fire a BitTorrent on the thing, I'm not even sure if you can fire a BitTorrent on one of these things, but if you tried to, then certainly, then you need some sort of soft capping mechanism. But to get these sort of products out to the mass market, you can't go out on Vodacom and MTN prepaid data rates and expect them to be a huge success. They need to. Great idea in terms of the hardware, bit of a fail in terms of the back end thinking and around the pricing.
I can see what they're thinking though, and I can sort of understand the mindset. Is that if you have a prepaid data product that you can now buy a prepaid data SIM card and a prepaid data package that your airtime, it makes it complicated because then you've got millions of prepaid data users using this product because it's cheaper, which for them is great, but I think that they're trying to push as high margin as possible as they can for as long as they possibly can.
Of course.
Which is fair, it is a business. But at the end of the day, what they could have done was lock down the SIM cards to these devices particularly.
Exactly. All they do is they create a special APN for these devices.
For these devices, exactly. Yeah. And that would have been ideal. And take a leaf out of BlackBerry's book using the unlimited data, unlimited email. I mean, even if they just cut it down to unlimited email, that already will make a huge difference. Yeah. But
and limit access to services. I mean, don't let people watch YouTube videos. You can prioritize. You create a special APN and simply block peer-to-peer traffic so people don't download music and movies on this connection using BitTorrent. And seriously prioritize basic web and email browsing.
Absolutely.
And introduce it at a price that's going to get this market to adopt. I mean, your LSM 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, they might buy these things just to play around with them, but it's not going to be the primary market. The primary market are guys who can't afford to buy a computer.
Exactly. And these guys will be converted. These guys will be empowered. Once they know how to use the internet, once they know what's available to them to the internet, that's an empowering scenario, and they will be converted to higher level packages, almost guaranteed.
You quoted some interesting statistics, and I know they've been around for a while. I think it's from the World Bank, stating that for every 10% increase in mobile penetration in the country, it has a 1.2%. It increases the country's GDP by 1.2 percentage points.
Yes, it was a 2008 World Bank report on the correlation between broadband and the economy.
I remember having a chat about it with Alan Knott Craig, Senior, the ex-Vodacom CEO, when he was still at Vodacom, and he was very excited about the research when it came out at the time. And yeah, I mean, if that World Bank research is correct, I mean, we must be absolutely encouraging operators to get these devices out there.
Which is why I have to temper the column that I wrote, and why I have to temper the criticism that I have for these devices, because it's fantastic. It's great to see the innovation coming through. It's great to see that they're trying to make that target market have access to the internet, where government hasn't managed to penetrate that market just yet. And I think that it's great. They must continue. They must work on it, and they must continue the innovation. What I think would be good now would be to see government doing some incentivizing of these kinds of
I was just about to say, we've got the Universal Service Fund, which is administered by the Universal Service and Access Agency of South Africa.
Absolutely. Subsidize
use that money. There's $1 billion plus rand sitting in there. Use some of that money to incentivize the operators to get these devices out into the market.
Absolutely. Why not provide a data subsidization on these devices? You know, that would already cut down the cost for the end user.
I agree, absolutely. They should absolutely be doing that. Good. Last story to chat about this week before we call it a week is Super 5 Media. There's been a little bit of action there, not much. What's the latest?
Well, from what we understand, that they have applied to the regulator for an extension on their license to launch, the actual date that they have to have a product on the market.
Just to go back about 5 years ago now? Isn't it long ago?
4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years ago that ICASA licensed new operators, pay TV operators, to compete with the incumbent operator. MultiChoice, which owns DSTV, part of the Naspers stable.
One of them was Top TV.
One of them was On Digital Media, which owns Top TV, and they've gone on and seem to be doing very well. They've got at least 200,000, probably 250,000 customers on their platform now, and
they've got enough to consider launching high definition and bringing a new sports channel. So
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah. But they were the only ones who launched. All the other licensees haven't done a thing. ETV decided, hey, this market's getting too competitive, so they bailed on their effort.
They went to a 24-hour channel rather on DSTV.
That's right. They took the money and launched the E-News channel.
Yes.
And Walking on Water Television, which is the Christian Family Values channel, which has now apparently become a bouquet of channels. God knows what's happened to them, if you excuse the pun.
Well, we're still fishing with that on that end, but haven't heard anything back just yet.
And Super 5 Media, which was actually the most promising of the new licensees.
At the time was Telkom Media.
Telkom's plan to get into this space has turned into a bit of a damp squib, and now they're begging for more time from the regulator, and it's not clear yet whether they're going to get it or not.
It doesn't appear, well, from the tone, I mean, I can't speculate,
sure.
From the tone that I understood, the regulator may not actually allow this extension. I mean, it has been 5 years.
Yes.
It's been an awful long time, and while they have had several hurdles to cross, the sale, and then several director issues, and issues with the minority shareholders, and then the majority shareholder, and then the retrenchment of all the staff to actually just maintain the business. It needs to get its act together and get something out, and we're expecting either the beginning or the end of February to see something or some movement on this.
Well, best of luck to them. As far as I'm concerned, the more competition, the better. But I'm not hopeful in this particular case.
I don't see it happening anytime soon, if at all.
No, but keep an eye on Tech Central. We will certainly be keeping an eye on the story and letting you know as soon as we know about what ICASA's decision is in terms of Super 5 Media's license and what we can expect from them, if anything. That's all the time we have for this week, Candice. Thanks again for listening to the Talk Central podcast. Apologies for it being a bit late this week. We hopefully will be back on schedule from our next show. As always, if you have any feedback on the show, you can email us at info@techcentral.co.za. Until next time, from myself and Candice, goodbye.